An icon popped up on the tablet screen, inviting you to join a closed party. Just at the moment when our heroine was finishing reading another fantasy novel, she was about to close the advertisement, but for some reason, she read it to the end. The ad invited her to a secret party and promised to receive 5,000 for it. It was quite a tempting offer because you could easily get money. As a fan of fantasy romance, she couldn't pass up the opportunity and clicked accept. A week later, when I had forgotten all about that advertisement, a package arrived from the platform. Inside was a helmet that looked like a virtual one, and a note that it needed to be put on at midnight. That same night, without thinking, she followed the instructions and put on the helmet before going to bed. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in the world of the video game The Secret Party. At first, she felt a little dizzy, but this feeling passed very quickly. The game's interior was designed in a Western style, which surprised our heroine a little. The maids scurried around the estate, as expected in novels with aristocratic heroes. The girl began to examine herself and was not very happy with her dress. She was also a little annoyed by the status screen, but she was definitely transported into the game. The status screen revealed that she was an experienced reader of fantasy novels. She thought that she needed to sort everything out urgently, and on the screen, her status was that of a hero. Having overheard the maid's conversation, I realized that she was going to enter high society. I also learned that she was the daughter of a baron, but, unfortunately, her parents had recently died. I thought it was time to read the instructions to better understand what was going on. A few hours later, she had settled into this new game world perfectly. She was truly amused by the modern gadgets that the platform provided her with. They did not match the style inside at all, and the management was also among them. After reading the instructions, our heroine realized the full scale of the problem. It was a virtual world based on fantasy romance novels, where players could try out everything they wanted, and which they could previously only read about. This game was created to introduce a fantasy romance world into virtual reality. She offered different scenarios, and this was a unique opportunity to try. Having guessed that this was a beta version, the girl became worried that something might go wrong. What if she gets stuck here forever? Are they responsible for the consequences? Then she decided that she needed to urgently reread the coupon and clicked on the link again. The fine print stated that they would not be held liable for any problems that might arise. She was upset that she had been so cleverly fooled, but still, there was something good. Seeing her new face, she thought that maybe she could become the main beauty. The thought came to her mind that in this world, things might really be better for her. She was distracted from these thoughts by a voice outside the door. The young lady thought it was probably the maid. The voice continued that it was Mary and asked if she could come in, and the girl was confused. The maid looked in and said that the Duke would be here soon and she would get her ready. The conversation was about Duke Byrne of the House of Eiderg, and he was to become her guard. Based on Mary's words, our heroine learned that her parents had recently died. Fortunately, they left an inheritance, but gave a fortune to charity. They gave a lot, and during their lifetime, they apparently expected that the inheritance would be enough, that it would remain after her wedding and departure to another family, but they miscalculated. The Baron and his wife did not expect that they would die so early and leave her an orphan. The Duke, her cousin, takes pity on her and arrives to become her guard. Then she became horrified. What if the Duke turns out to be a pervert and she starts having problems? In novels, they often write that a beautiful young lady is married to an old and pot-bellied man. At that moment, she wanted to die, and then maybe she could get out of the game. Fortunately, the reality turned out to be different. A young and very interesting man arrived. He hurried to her, telling her that she had been through so much and looked sad. An inner voice screamed how handsome he was, and he was definitely a cousin. I even wondered if it was possible to have romances with cousins in this novella. The Duke asked her not to worry, because at his uncle's estate, he would take care of her comfort and well-being. She couldn't believe her ears that this handsome man had sworn to protect her. She wanted to buy the full version of the game, not the demo, but this turned out to be impossible. From the message on the status screen, she learned that the game would be released in decades. Daisy was very worried that others could see the game screen, but this was not the case. The screen displayed a message that this participant reacts quickly to unforeseen situations. Lord Byrne told her that he still had some unfinished business and needed to leave. He added that he would be free tomorrow, and that today Butler would show her her room. Lady Daisy told the Duke to mind his own business, and that she would be fine. When the butler showed her to her chambers, the lady could not help but exclaim in admiration. After bowing, he asked to contact him at any time if he needed anything. After thanking Butler, she decided it was time to deal with the developers. She was getting pretty fed up with this stupid status window, and she knew they could hear her. So, without holding back, she shouted out her question. Are they watching her and her thoughts? But Daisy was not at all satisfied with their answer that they were not following, but only observing. The screen showed that he was a specialist in her program, in which she needed to create a script. To her accusations that he was a scammer with fine print, he replied that he did not create it. Then the specialist asked her to calm down, because he was there to help her. He explained that this would help her to overtake other users and reach the top of the rankings. She was very surprised that she was not alone in the game. He replied that there were currently 100 players in it. She was truly stunned by the news that there were 99 other young ladies here. It turned out that several users were logging in and playing on the same server at the same time. That's how she learned she was in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The continent where the players are located is divided into 4 kingdoms: the Empire of Spring, Summer, and Autumn. And each empire has 33 players, so there are 100 people in the game. And from this, she concluded that only 100 people fell for this advertisement. Our heroine felt offended that she was among those who were deceived by scammers. However, after thinking about it, she realized that the math doesn't add up, because there are 100 players. When she asked where the last player was, it showed that she was observant. The fallen princess, a vanished race from the Winter Kingdom, was missing from the players. It occurred to Daisy that she was very lucky and that she had not gotten this role. She became curious whether there might still be some tragic and unsolved secrets left. For example, all her property went to charity, and this may not be enough. And according to the rules of the genre, she could very well have ended up with the wife of some fat, nasty politician. She imagined this ending very vividly, but was asked not to worry. After all, its plot was specially selected, based on the last novella she read. She didn't have to worry about a sham marriage. She hadn't read about it for a long time. She highlighted the message that her topic was tagged reverse harem and hardcore. The tags continued: handsome, obsessed, misunderstanding spendthrift gentleman. When she demanded to stop, they reminded her that these were her last recommendations. She was angry at the developers for knowing such personal information. She was immediately assured that all this information would be cleared after the end of the game. I got even more angry. It seemed like this was not a romantic fantasy. She couldn't understand why she was fighting the AI. She wanted to finish the game. When I asked how to stop, I received the answer that when the story ends, the game will end. The story of where she ended up is based on the popular novella, The Villainess of the Empire and Her Life. Afterwards, she was informed that she would be there until the story ended. Recalling this story, our heroine thought that some facts did not add up. The heroine's name was not Daisy, and she was insanely rich from the start. They responded that in order not to violate copyright, they only took the character designs and plot ranks. So everything else would be created by her. And then Daisy demanded money. Then she reminded the developers that the main feature of that novella was money. After the message that it wouldn't work out, I thought that I wouldn't get out until I finished it. However, she had little to lose, so she could test a lot in the world of fantasy romance. After all, she dreamed about this so much. There was only one very serious problem. The developer asked her if she was worried about working in the real world. He asked me not to worry. Time doesn't move in this game. Everything stopped at 8 in the morning. He explained that before the move, even if 10 years pass, time will not change. After asking if everything was okay, he asked her to turn on the laptop he had given her. She said that she was still offended, but all this did not change the fact that she was brought here by deception. Then she added that if he wanted to make amends, then let him make her rich. As per canon, and she has no desire to do anything, the screen flickered. A message appeared that a handsome protagonist was waiting for her, and there were several of them. It took Daisy several long moments to process this news. Her mood improved, and she said that they could have said this earlier. A message appeared on the status screen that they were pleased to see her fully motivated. Having made herself comfortable, Our heroine immersed herself in studying the virtual game. After the conversation, some of her fears subsided, and she wanted to learn something new. On the tablet screen, she saw a new icon, the Society of Transported Ladies. When she clicked on it, she saw a message asking if she wanted to join. After rereading the title, she thought that most likely all the players on the site were players. Having agreed, she was transferred to the site, where she was immediately inundated with messages. One said who was transferred today. The other said if I die here, I will die. Will I die in reality? There was a notice board there, and now Daisy could see all 99 players. There were a lot of posts, but as in all communities, first it was necessary to study the news. After greeting the glider, she calculated that they had all worked hard in this world. He said that he created this community to help them forget about real life a little. Their real life will remain confidential, and he asks that no personal information be shared. For consistency, all players will be numbered as young ladies. She thought how cringeworthy it was, but decided to read a couple of the posts anyway. After scrolling through the feed, she couldn't decide what exactly to read and stopped. Among the titles, one strange inscription intrigued her. I want to die. Help me. In the post, the girl reported that she was currently living in the Summer Kingdom and did not know what to do. She went on to say that she had made a lot of mistakes and that her storyline was on the rocks. The player wrote that she had been ordered and that a serial killer would kill her next week. I understood that when people control others, they are always desperately trying to survive. After all, even if she dies, she will simply wake up and continue living her life. But even so, being in this world, the fact that the killer was somewhere nearby terrified her. Luckily, the main character had already committed several crimes and gone to prison. The player began to think that she could relax, but the original heroine escaped. She then reported that she would definitely come for her, and given the travel time, she would be here in a week. Our heroine was worried about that player, but it turned out to be from last year's post. Then she decided to read what was in the comments, because the player had probably already been helped. Other players, judging by the messages, also sympathized and advised action. The fourth lady wrote that the emperor could help the lady in the kingdom of summer. The fifth lady advised using teleportation skills and escaping. A year later, the author wrote that, even with the help of others, they could not solve anything. The seventh lady asked where she was now. In what part of the Autumn Kingdom exactly? The lady was surprised when she received this message, but immediately began to respond. She wrote that she was in the far left room on the second floor of Count Gobern's mansion. The seventh replied that she understood, would be there immediately, and would help with teleportation. The lady in distress reread the message, and a second later saw the guest. She brought teleportation scrolls with her. One of them was intended for the owner. The author couldn't believe that they were just giving her one, because they are very expensive. The guest replied that she was a witch and had plenty of such junk, and there was no need to worry. The Autumn Kingdom player sincerely thanked her savior, and she replied that they should help each other, which touched our heroine. The seventh lady, who was a witch, did not yet guess what the consequences of her actions would be. After all, judging by subsequent posts, other players reacted to this. The 27th lady wrote that she became a farmer, but there is constant bad weather here. And that's not the worst of it. There's a cow farm here, and every morning she wakes up to the stench. That's why she asks to save her too. Then the seventh one asked to send her the address. After this, the witch was inundated with requests to help them all too. 7 replied to everyone that she would try to send it out, and Daisy thought it was sweet. After all, they helped each other, but she thought that the ranking system would force them to fight. Daisy became curious about how the author was doing and whether he had managed to escape from the killer. Our heroine had to dig a little before she found the continuation. The author wrote that many years have passed since then, but she is glad that she has not been forgotten. She hasn't written in the community for a long time, as she couldn't log in due to many events. But in any case, she will get straight to the point, because thanks to the witch she was able to escape. The post was flooded with messages from other players, who were happy to see her back. The author, having thanked everyone, wrote that she would now tell how it really happened. She planned to use the teleportation rod to escape from the Autumn Kingdom, and she had already packed all her things when her younger brother suddenly burst into her room. He asked her where she was going at such a late hour, and she decided to confess everything. When Daisy read that her brother was going to meet the author, she almost jumped out of her seat. Worried about the author, she was curious to see how events would develop further. The lady wrote that she already knew then that her half-brother had feelings for her. And as other players know, having a male protagonist is very important. But she hasn't chosen a hero yet, and her story has been stuck at the sun level for several years. Our heroine didn't know what it was, so she asked to explain what a sun was. The fifth one wrote that there was another one who did not read the instructions completely. She was told that there are 4 stages in this game: G, Sun, Gen, and Gel. The player is automatically transported to the sun as time passes and the story progresses. But to switch to Gen, you need to choose a male protagonist, and from there the story goes on with the man, reaching Gel, which speaks of the ending. Daisy quickly wrote that it was an easy game. You just had to choose the right man. The answer to her was that everything is not so, and there are a couple of rules that should be followed. If you choose a hero and relax, paying attention only to the scenes of 18+, then the story will be filtered out, and the ending will never happen due to lack of content. Most of the players criticized the developers, accusing them of lack of interest. Then the author returned and asked if everyone else was so interested in her story. At the request of the players, she wrote that her brother liked her and noticed this sympathy. When I entered him as a candidate, the system reported that the main character's slot was activated. A screen with his hero appeared, but unfortunately, he only had a B rating. The author wrote that, knowing how ranks affect ratings, she expected rank S or A, but she just wanted to live the game happily, and once she reached Gel, make an update. The players shook hands and wished the author a happy life, all but the 10th. She wrote that these ratings are not important at all, because there is only one prize. Only from this message did our heroine learn that there was a grand prize. Having become interested in this question, I found out that the prize was 2 billion. Then Daisy thought, this changes the whole situation. She can become rich. An image of her future $2 billion deposit appeared before her mind's eye, and she dreamed of earning more than she ever could. She was transported to her happy future, where she could cry while hugging a pillow. He will wipe away tears with 50,000 ruble bills instead of paper napkins. And he won't deny himself the little prank of throwing out a resignation letter. At this point, her dreams were interrupted. What if this money was in-game currency? Although it was so tempting to quit right away and live a quiet, comfortable life, she told herself that she had to be realistic, that such a game would not give that much money. A message appeared on the screen that this was real money, and she was happy. They then stated that since this is a beta test, they are collecting all the information will be based on the results and various preferences of the players, where they will end up and who they will meet during the game, who will be chosen as the story progresses, and what will they do. Ultimately, each player will make a choice, creating millions of new episodes, and all the generated information is worth much more than some money. Then our heroine thought that the prize was for all the suffering she had endured, and I wondered why there was a rating if everyone received prizes at the end of the game. In general, the game doesn't seem that difficult, since everything ends with the choice of a man. Status reported that after the game ends, novellas will be written based on their stories. AI monitors and evaluates the stories, and the top 10 receive 40%. The rest will receive only 10% of the profits from the sale of these novellas. The novella based on her story has about 23,000 characters. Daisy thought with horror that every wrong step she took would be judged. Moreover, no matter how much nastiness she does, it will still be a novella. The status asked not to worry about anything personal and unnecessary will be immediately deleted. So what happened was, if she finished the game, they would create a novella, and she would make a profit. A message appeared that writing a novella is not mandatory, only those who want to do it. She replied that she wanted her own novella, even if she came in last place. While she was pondering the main prize, a new post appeared in the community. The post asked if anyone was going to the spring ball, and Daisy decided to give it a try. She was immediately asked if this was her debut, and whether she had chosen an outfit and a partner. When she replied that she was new and had already chosen her, messages started pouring in. Someone asked if she needed anything and asked her not to hesitate to ask questions. Our heroine suddenly felt so pathetic, but at the same time loved. She wrote to the First Lady that she was still getting used to it and would do everything slowly. Lady Number 1 asked if she could help with the debut in any way. Then she added that she was a duchess and could become an escort for the new girl. Chaperones protect and guide young ladies, helping them make their debut. From her words, our heroine understood that the duchess was a person of the highest rank, and she couldn't believe it. Daisy had no connections and tried to refuse the duchess's help. But the First Lady replied that they have something more than connections. It is the player's duty. The girl thought, all the displaced characters in this world have a player's debt. On the other hand, she had never been so kind to anyone, and she grew to love these ladies. The Duchess suggested meeting since they were already discussing it all. She also wrote that this happens often, and they meet in the Agini Cafe. When Daisy asked if she could join, the Duchess said, "Of course." Lady Number 1 encouraged her by saying that they were always very happy to welcome newcomers. Thus, our heroine found herself in the most vibrant area of the Spring Kingdom. Everything around me was so detailed that I couldn't believe it was a game. Walking through the streets, she noticed the smallest details, especially in people. They were all very nice, helpful, and ready to help here. She noted this when she was still in the Duke's house. There were nice maids there. Our heroine then thought that this could not be a simple coincidence. This game never ceased to amaze her. The world was so beautiful that her eyes ran wild. On one of the houses, she saw a sign with an illustration of a coffee mug. There could be no mistake. Apparently, this was the cafe the Duchess had told her about. She was worried because she would meet personally the ladies who were in the community. I was even a little worried about the impression I would make on them, but Daisy was still more interested in what they were really like. The ladies of the community were in keeping with the world around them, and they looked chic. She watched them from afar, not because she was embarrassed, but simply because she was confused. When they all stood up abruptly and looked at her, she became even more embarrassed. A thought flashed through my head that maybe I did something wrong, or looked at it askance. An incredibly beautiful lady asked, "So you're the new girl?" And she herself answered that she knew, because the one who entered looked at everything with such surprise. When asked what her name was, she replied that Daisy Maya Estella had been here for less than a week. The classy lady introduced herself as Sienna Tribiana, the lady's escort, and she is a duchess in the Spring Kingdom, after which she introduced Barbara, the prima donna of their world. The third lady was Ryan, and she turned out to be the best designer in all the kingdoms. Ryan said she has read translated works and likes competent characters. At that moment, Daisy thought that she looked so helpless compared to them. Then she said that this game was supposed to be on trial and completely new. But seeing the posts, which were already several years old, it seemed to her that they had known each other for a long time. The Duchess replied that they all came in at midnight, just like the new girl. Pointing to the scale, she said that this was because the awakening point was different for each player. Some players could possess babies, while others possessed an adult. Smiling, the Duchess added that, at least, they had a handy cheat code, 3 symbols. Thanks to this code, each player can travel to any point in time. To Daisy's surprised exclamation, the Duchess replied that she always uses it. For example, when she argues with her husband, she asks the manager to skip this scene. Then she explained that she had already been married before waking up in this world. And although she had a husband, he spent more time with his mistress than with her. Our lady was outraged by the hero's behavior and promised to break his legs. The customers at the other table asked her to calm down. She was too loud. The Duchess asked not to worry. One of her keywords is the hashtag ideal guy. She explained to a shocked Daisy that she would soon get divorced and ride off into the sunset with the prince. This calmed the newcomer down, because she thought that the First Lady was suffering because of her husband. The other 2 ladies were careerists and had no interest in hero candidates. The lady added that she must admit that she would like to find the hidden S-rank hero. And our heroine remembered that many ladies were talking about this hero on the forum. It must be like a rare diamond, not just the best, but extraordinary. This is the jackpot, and it is enough to move up from 100th place straight to first. The Duchess said that if she meets him, she feels that life will become more interesting. Then Daisy asked if maybe she didn't need a man of that rank to be happy. Her AI assistant said that happiness comes first, but the lady was advised not to trust him. If their happiness was the developer's goal, they would not have created a rating system. They are the ones who draw players into competition. But is this really necessary for their happiness? Our lady thought the girls were right, considering how she had been lured here. Here everyone was distracted. It was impossible not to notice the approaching carriage. There were quiet groans and gasps in the cafe, and Barbara asked who was riding her. When the man got out of the carriage, all the ladies watched him with bated breath. Then the girls began to discuss it in low voices, each expressing her own opinion. From the Duchess's reaction, our girl realized that she was familiar with this man. It was Duke Ellen Kald. He rules in the northern region and has property here. Looking at him, Daisy thought that he deserved the leading man award. The Duchess, catching her glance, asked if the newcomer had chosen anyone for the male slot, and she continued that it was definitely worth adding this duke. But Daisy didn't even know how. The lady explained that if you could reach his collar, he would automatically be on the list of candidates. The friends even suggested several options, losing his neck or straightening his tie. The new girl didn't agree with the statement that it was easy, since she had just met him. The AI suggested that if she included this one as a candidate, he would definitely fall in love with her, but she still wasn't at all sure that she could do it. The AI whined if she wanted 2 billion, and all it took was one man. And if she doesn't want to, then her 2 billion cried. The AI has an excellent motivation. Having said that she would be right back, she thought that she would not give her 2 billion to anyone. As she was about to fall out into the street, the AI's advice to clean up the bird droppings surfaced. However, she was thinking more about her win, oh no, rather about her candidate. But only until the moment when she was next to him and looked into his face. What often happens in such situations happened to her. She lost the power of speech, and she needed to touch his neck, but in such a way that he wouldn't suspect anything. A message from the AI appeared congratulating you on successfully writing 5 chapters. She was a little surprised, but the AI explained that her game would be enough for 5 episodes. Daisy thought she had done nothing, but then a message about a reward came. Before she had time to come to her senses, she was presented with the first item of the ideal assistant. I wondered if she needed it. When a second item appeared, it was a cheat key, and almost immediately after that, a third item appeared in the form of a hair changer. The game asked her to choose one, but she didn't know what they all did. After thinking it over, she decided that this was the one she needed, and told the manager that she was choosing a cheat key. The cheat key adjusted the conditions for a collision with the neck of the desired man. Afterwards, the AI reported that it was scanning for a suitable character. The choice fell on the Duke. The AI asked if she wanted to use the cheat key on him. Having agreed, I thought, I wonder what kind of circumstances might arise with the Duke. While she was wondering what might happen, the AI was already projecting a scenario for the meeting. The initialization happened quickly, and she didn't have to stand there looking at the Duke for long. However, when the news of the Demon King's awakening came, she was horrified. After all, who would have thought that there is a real Demon King in this world? However, she didn't understand why he needed to wake up, because she just wanted to touch his neck. The AI reported that we were being transported 65 years back to the Winter Kingdom. Not far from the border, a bloody battle took place between demons and humans. The demons suffered great losses because their king had been dormant for many years. However, 15 years later, with the awakening of the king, the tide of the war turns. The enraged Demon King has placed a curse of permafrost on the Winter Kingdom. And not only the Winter Kingdom, but other kingdoms also suffered. Then the Demon King offered a deal. He would stop the destruction of the world on one condition. If they sacrificed, the princess would end up being sent to the Demon King. Afterwards, he went into hibernation with the princess, and the world has been living on the brink for 50 years. Daisy couldn't believe that she could be the reason for the Demon King's awakening. AI urged her to tell the Duke that the king would wake up in 5 months, and if she doesn't tell him this within 5 seconds, the item won't work. Meanwhile, the Duke got tired of waiting and asked if she had any business with him. The seconds ticked by, and the AI added that it was still a level 5 emergency. The Duke was about to leave, but time was running out, so he had to make a decision. He didn't like the way she scolded him, but she said she had important information. Leaning over, he heard that in 5 months, the Demon King would awaken, and Daisy heard that the young man was registered. This is Helen Eastus Kjeld. The AI listed character traits. and the keyword was the hashtag lack of understanding of the genre. The Duke thought that, judging by what she had done for him, she had feelings for him. Daisy didn't understand why this particular one was chosen among all her preferences. What will she do now with a man who doesn't understand? But it will clearly be difficult. Confirmation of her thought was not long in coming. He suddenly called out to her. Then, just as suddenly, without any interest in her opinion, he pulled her aside. At first, not understanding what was happening, Our Lady obediently followed him. When her mind returned, she stopped abruptly and asked where he was dragging her. But when, instead of an answer, she heard his question about how long ago it had been, she was confused. Then, in a slightly angry tone, he repeated how long she had been following him. After all, if he knows about the awakening, then he followed it all the way to the Autumn Queen's temple, and she overheard the prophecy of the saint who was watching him for his attention. When he asked her why she had fallen so deeply in love, she was again speechless. Having repeated to myself, "I fell in love," I said out loud. It seems he misunderstood something. He replied that it was the first time he had seen someone approach him in such a strange way. She thought that misunderstandings looked funny in novels, but not in life. The Duke asked her to act as if she had not heard anything about the Demon King. And this is very dangerous information. At this moment, Duke Eiterga interrupted his speech. She was delighted to see the other ladies and asked how they knew where they were. The Duchess replied that they had followed and therefore seen where the Duke had taken her. She added that they got scared and quickly approached, and Duke Eiterga joined them. Sir Byrne asked how the Duke had come up with the idea of dragging the lady to such a secluded place, to which Lord Elin angrily informed everyone that it was she who had been following him. Daisy said through her tears that she was actually scared when he brought her here. She added that they all came running so quickly, and the Duchess began to calm her down. Then she whispered in her ear that she should continue crying. Then the Duke would leave faster. Then, speaking louder so that the Duke could hear, she asked her not to be upset anymore. When Milady scolded the Duke, he replied that it was the woman who had been following him. After these words, the ladies rushed at him, saying that he had no manners at all. Our heroine noted from her own experience that this is why they say that strength lies in unity. The Duke, saying that they did not understand anything, added that he had to leave. Cousin Byrne shouted menacingly after him that the Duke would regret this incident. When he asked if everything was okay with his cousin, she replied that she was just a little scared, that the Duke simply grabbed her sharply, and the brother was glad that she was not hurt. Having finally calmed down, he asked how she knew so many ladies. The Duchess answered for her, saying that they had become good friends. She added that she was also Miss Daisy's escort at the upcoming ball. The cousin asked again in surprise, and the sister explained that she had simply forgotten to mention it. Duke Eiterga said that this was great, because he was very worried about the preparations. Meanwhile, Lady Barbara and Lady Ryan were touched by his angelic face. The Duchess decided to remind the Duke that he had business on Aegina Street. When he confirmed this information, the Duchess said he could go. He was not very keen to leave this lovely company of ladies, but the lady insisted. Realizing that he would not be allowed to stay in the company, he apologized for taking up their time. Then, saying that he was leaving Miss Daisy in good hands, he said goodbye to everyone. Finally free of the male company, the ladies looked at their newcomer. This was the first time they had seen a candidate drag a lady around the corner during registration. Seeing genuine interest in their eyes, she was going to tell them everything. She said that they found a common language, but as soon as she got to the demons, she fell silent. The AI said that awakening is secret information and cannot be shared with others. And although our heroine also wanted to help, the information was blocked. She tried to say it several times, but the AI really didn't let her say it. Having given in, she told the ladies that he had misunderstood everything and had started accusing her of stalking. To make sure they understood her correctly, she explained that his keyword was misunderstanding. The Duchess said she knew a lady who was stuck on a man with that keyword. Such consolations made her worry even more about her future. However, there was little time left before the ball, and it was still necessary to choose a dress. Daisy was quite pleased that her new friend Ryan had already thought of the design, but she still thought that she should learn more about the awakening of the Demon King. Having typed the awakening of the Demon King into the search engine, I was surprised by the result. She looked at the screen of her tablet and couldn't believe her eyes. Completely different requests appeared on the screen. Now she was looking at the benefits of garlic. This was the first time this had happened to her, but she stubbornly continued her search. Changing the words and their position still resulted in completely unrelated queries. There were also massage appointments, repair costs, and even a magic team. Is this information really so secret that it is even encrypted from users? This question haunted her, and how could she, as a newcomer, find out more? The AI reported that keywords can be seen by those who have this information. Besides her, the Emperor of the Summer Kingdom has this information. She is the second sword of the continent and the saint of the Autumn Kingdom. She is also the prophet of the era. The AI added that now the Baron's daughter from the Spring Kingdom, a homebody, also knows. Only the three of them have this information, and there are 10 other male characters. Now she understood why the Duke knew about this, but there were still questions. Those two female characters have cool callings, so why is she a homebody? In fact, a homebody should calmly enjoy life in a romantic fantasy. She became distracted and wondered what kind of dress Lady Ryan would prepare for her. She didn't want to wait for several days, so she decided to use the secret item. And then she asked the AI manager to send her straight to the day of the ball. The AI reported that the pass system was activated and the long-awaited day had arrived. Before our heroine could even come to her senses, she found herself in a huge ballroom. It still took her a few seconds to get used to the bright light. First of all, she wanted to look at her outfit, because that was what she came here for, and she thought that it must have taken more than 6 hours to assemble, and she was in it in a moment. With this item in real life, you wouldn't have to push your way through the subway. It would be better not to go to work at all, but to skip all the days until payday. She really wanted the same thing to happen in reality, and then she was distracted by messages. It was the Duchess, asking if the new girl had used the pass item, and she explained that she understood this because the way a real body moves is robotic and smooth. Then she added that since she used this device, it means she is starting to develop. Suddenly, the messages stopped and the AI reported that sending was limited. Next, she heard the Duchess's voice complimenting her. To Daisy's surprised cry, Milady explained that she had sent her an AI message. After all, if the AI is activated, the ladies can send thoughts to each other like messages. The Duchess said there would be restrictions of up to 10, but there was no need to worry about that either. Pointing to her watch, she explained that with it, she could send unlimited messages. Noticing that others were wearing them too, Daisy asked if they weren't too noticeable. Milady replied that there was no need to worry, since only players could see electronics. The rest think that we are just pointing our fingers in the air, but that is not important. Our heroine thought that she would definitely have to wear her own next time. A lady with pink pigtails and a teardrop-shaped birthmark approached them, and she was a player, and she asked Our Lady if she wasn't Michaela from I Will Leave the Evil Duke. When Daisy replied that it was, the other lady introduced herself as Rosalind. She added that she was glad to meet him, and that it was one of the first short stories she had read. Then she noticed that Daisy had soft hands, and it was not like she was touching them. She also said that it's generally amazing to meet the heroes of your favorite novels. The girls discussed their favorite fantasy books for some time. A new friend promised to introduce Daisy to some of the characters in this game. At that moment, the large game screen greeted the players, and they froze in anticipation. It appeared on the screen, so let's start the long-awaited game of Cinderella. The Duchess explained that instead of finding the owner of the slipper, the ball was looking for treasure. And she advised me to participate because the prizes for winning places are super cool. Then they announced the theme of today's hunt. It was the search for the royal fund. There are hidden treasures in the capital. They can be in the form of money and other valuables. The top 3 players will receive the man's search item, and third place will be the man's search item. The participant who wins second place will receive a ticket for a 30-minute regression. The winner will be shown 3 candidates and given a clue about the secret S-rank man. Voices were heard in the hall as players discussed this unexpected opportunity. The AI told Daisy that if she recognized him, she would immediately rise in the rankings. Our heroine thought it would be hard, but she would achieve first place. The main screen displayed, "Let's start the treasure hunt." The prize was so coveted that the ladies rushed to search for it and scattered throughout the palace. This was of course understandable, since it's hard to resist a reward with an S-rank man. Daisy watched this fuss and decided to use another method. Mentally apologizing to the other ladies, she used the cheat code, namely, Seoul tax investigator Lee Gwang-pil, through the power of his father. He told her how they cleverly avoid paying taxes and how the country is full of thieves. The day has finally come when years of stories about boring work will bear fruit. There is a high probability that the treasure is art, such as paintings. They are very volatile in price, which allows you to earn money on the markup. Not everyone is subject to taxation, and this is an excellent scheme for money laundering. Time was ticking relentlessly, and there were only 8 minutes and 37 seconds left. She had no guarantee that everything would be exactly like this, but she couldn't waste her time. She asked that these 12 paintings be recorded as part of the royal estate. The allotted time was up, and the hunt for the royal treasure was over. The screen announced that third place went to the lady who found 3 treasures. The developers wanted to keep the winners anonymous, but the lady gave herself away. Second place went to the lady who was able to find 5 treasures. Once again, anonymity was broken, as the lady's friends congratulated her too actively. The prize for second place was the subject of a man's search. The lady no longer concealed her joy. The winner was announced, and first place went to the lady who found 12 treasures. Thus, our heroine received the prize of viewing hidden S-rank men. Someone asked how she managed to find 12 at once, but Daisy herself couldn't believe her luck. She thought that she dedicated this victory to Lee Gwang-pil, and she was immensely grateful to him. The AI reported that the item was added to the inventory, but it was too rare, and if she doesn't use it within a minute, it will be deleted and time will start. She thought it was unfair. What a damn system it was that always did this. But she shouted that she would use it right now, and the viewing of the hidden man began. The system reported that the item allows you to view 3 candidates. Next, the item has been successfully activated, and the first candidate will be shown soon. Daisy noticed that for some reason, everything around her began to change, and her head began to spin. For a moment, it became so dark that she couldn't see a thing, so she reached out her hand. Suddenly, she found herself on the terrace, and she didn't understand whether it was a game glitch or a map like that. When he asked why everything was so unexpected, a voice from behind said exactly what he wanted to ask. This voice seemed familiar to her. She had heard it somewhere just recently. Her suspicions were confirmed. Duke Hellenkaled was standing right behind her. When she asked why he was here, the Duke answered, as he had said, that he should ask. Afterwards, he asked her not to pretend and not to cry, like last time. She denied it, and he said she did it to put him in an awkward position. Changing the subject, Our Lady asked if he happened to know how she ended up there. Having explained that she had drunk a lot and did not remember anything, the Duke became a little confused. But he quickly came to his senses and said that she suddenly came running, just like last time. And in a puzzled tone, he added that she always falls right into his hands. When he asked her what she liked so much, she thought he was definitely a weird guy. I asked the AI if there was any object to shut this person up. Having received the answer that there was no such item, I realized that this was not what I wanted to ask about. She asked the Duke who else besides him had information about the Demon King. He asked her why it bothered her so much, since he had asked her not to get involved. Daisy replied sincerely that she needed to know who else was in danger and warn them. The Duke said that in the Spring Kingdom, only His Majesty, the Emperor, knows. This is a secret that is not accessible to ordinary citizens, and if she listened well, she will be rewarded. She didn't want him to say some disgusting nonsense, like he would pay for his silence with money. But the Duke had no intention of stooping to such a level. He asked about having lunch together. She sighed, and he said that if one was not enough, he would agree to dine twice. Like any girl, she was pleased that he didn't pay her off with money. The Duke said there was no need to be so grateful. He would pick her up on Thursday at 2. In response, she said that the Duke should not waste his precious time. If he had simply given her an amount equal to their dinner, she would have remained silent for the rest of her life. Still, the Duke seemed like a strange guy to her, and she didn't understand why she had to dine with him. It's better to get well drunk, and the AI reported that the viewing of the first candidate is finished. Our heroine thought it was too fast. She hadn't yet recovered from the first one. But it was already too late. Then she said that they should move her more carefully. When the dizziness ended, she realized that she was not in the spring palace. Her attention was drawn to the voices coming from behind the open door. Someone said that if you make an appointment, you should also indicate the location. Then she heard another person say that His Majesty was truly right. Daisy came closer to try to see who was in the room. She saw an attractive young man and thought he was the second candidate. The candidate asked his interlocutor if everything was going well with the subjugation of the Demon King. Someone answered and added that, starting with the Autumn Kingdom, they will go in different directions. Realizing what kingdom she was in, she thought that if he was in the know, he knew about the awakening. The candidate said that he was a real professional, but they couldn't take him on the expedition. The interlocutor replied that the gentleman could kill a bear with his bare hands, and he will remain to defend the kingdom. And the candidate asked, what about his honor as crown prince? Daisy thought she was being made fun of, first by the Duke, and now by the crowned prince. The AI quipped when he replied that this was the level that S-rank men should be. Who is the third candidate? She wondered. Maybe the villainous Demon King or the beautiful dragon. Almost in despair, she asked the AI how she could now play this game calmly. But there was no time to indulge in thoughts. She heard that Elena's dove had arrived yesterday. The assistant said that since the gentleman was talking about it, there was apparently something important there. Having answered in the affirmative, the crown prince added that it was not just important, but extraordinary. Daisy heard that there was a civilian who knew about the Demon King's awakening. The confidant asked who, since only a select few in the temple had heard the prophecy. Then he asked if someone had leaked it. But the crown prince replied that it couldn't be, that some lady in love simply followed her to the temple and overheard the prophecy. However, the crown prince understood that it was not all that simple, and that it seemed strange to him. The lady may be a spy who is gathering information about the Demon King. Since she overheard the prophecy, it means she is trying to prevent them from stopping it. But whoever she is, she will bring no good to the Autumn Kingdom. This means that he has no choice, and before the lady can stop them, he will kill her. And they were lucky, because she came right to their doorstep, and he didn't have to look for her. Daisy immediately declared that they had got it all wrong, and she swears she is not a spy. The crown prince asked if she was in love with Elena. Then it was nice to meet you. He chuckled and quipped that since she was tied up, they would have to do without shaking hands. Having finished with the pleasantries, he asked if she really had followed Helen all the way to the temple. Then he added that the palace was covered with invisible barriers, but she somehow got through. But what could Daisy answer him? That the system itself teleported her here. She only said that she had no intention of breaking in, and that if she was released, she would tell everything. The crown prince replied that, unfortunately for her, he was not Helen and would not fall for her tricks. Afterwards, he said that he would start small, and that was infiltrating the royal palace. And if she answers his questions, a message from the AI manager appeared, announcing that the viewing of men was coming to an end and without delay. The teleportation to the third candidate was about to begin, and Daisy tensed up. After all, I still remembered the previous two, but I was still glad it was very timely. However, her disappearance did not surprise the crown prince. He said that this was what needed to be proven. Our Lady sincerely hoped that this time it would go easier, but it did not. However, she remained alive and cursed that damn prince of the Autumn Kingdom. Now she had to figure out where she was this time, and she looked around. The thought came to mind that I had barely escaped from a psychopath, only to freeze alive. But no matter how cold she was, she still realized that this place was familiar to her. Thinking about this, I thought it was strange, because I didn't know the gaming world very well yet. A low, guttural roar came from behind her, and she slowly turned her head back. A foreign proverb came to mind, out of the frying pan into the fire. And this is exactly her case. It was definitely a monster, and I had to run as fast as I could. But, as luck would have it, Our Lady could not move. Her whole body seemed to have gone to sleep. The events that followed happened so quickly that she didn't have time to process anything. However, the monster was defeated, and some kind of ice block appeared out of nowhere. When Daisy was finally able to think, she saw a man walking towards her. Even if there was a crowd around, she would still only look at this man. At this point, she didn't need any AI cues to figure out that this was the third candidate. She forgot about everything in the world and thought that this was completely her type. She wanted to see every detail in order to imprint it in her memory. If this were a novella, it would have been written here about his divine figure, about a sharp nose, slightly protruding from under smooth eyebrows, and a face molded from snow. This candidate was exactly what girls imagine their prince to be. Her heart beat differently around him than it did with the other candidates. She looked at him as if enchanted, afraid to move so as not to frighten the moment. His gentle touch was as light as a summer breeze. But from this breath, her heart was ready to burst out of her chest. She froze. She was so absorbed in her feelings that she didn't immediately hear the AI. He announced that the screening of the third candidate was over and she was returning. She couldn't believe it was all over, because she didn't even have time to find out his name. For the first time in her life, she felt uncomfortable asking such a question, and she apologized. But that was all she managed to say after that, and she was teleported to the palace. And he, looking at the sky, said, "The sun, waiting for the first star, I finally found you." Daisy could not hear these words because her body was in the palace. It was the most terrifying comeback of her life, and she didn't know how to react. She was well aware that arguing with the system was useless anyway. It hurt her, because they didn't even have time to talk. At that moment she was called. Turning towards the voice, she saw the Duchess, who was apparently looking for her. The Duchess said she was worried when Daisy didn't return after the game. She thought that the new girl was lost, and went to look for her, but sees that everything is fine. Daisy was so eager to share that she had won, and that the prize was related to a man. But the Duchess interrupted her story and said that everything was fine. She understood everything. If this is valuable and secret information, then she shouldn't be told about it. And then, smiling in a friendly manner, the Duchess suggested returning to the banquet. Our Lady asked, a little surprised, that she definitely didn't want to know anything. After all, she helped, and she doesn't want to seem ungrateful, but my lady didn't let her finish. She said that she appreciated her sentimentality, but as she had already said, she did not believe in the system. Then she explained that she meant that the longer he plays, the more he doubts. She continued that this game awakens the competitive spirit among players. Different awards are given for different places, and even men have their own ranking. A little incentive might be good, but it seems to her that the system has other plans for that. Ladies can help each other and have a good time, but if the competition increases, then everyone will split up, starting to betray each other, and inevitably, feelings will be hurt. That's why she tries to keep her distance from such competitions. Afterwards, she apologized for disturbing us and suggested going back to the ball. Daisy thought that she, too, was only interested in the ending and lived by ranks and ratings. If he reveals what happened today, the ladies will focus on the S-rank candidates. And during this process, there would be fighting and chaos, and she didn't want that. Having mentally thanked the Duchess, I decided not to tell anyone about the candidates. Her gaming life was back to normal, and she was simply enjoying herself. She thought that for now, she should enjoy her situation here. Try to find a man of your type, similar to the third candidate. Enjoy the world of fantasy romance and live your best life. Her cousin knocked on the door and asked if she was there, and Daisy invited him in. During her stay here, she developed a very good relationship with him. It's true that he had been busy all the time the last few days, so she asked what he wanted. The cousin announced that a guest had arrived who wanted to see her immediately. She was very surprised, but apparently her brother was no less surprised than Daisy. For reasons unknown to my lord, the crown prince of the Autumn Kingdom was expecting her. Almost in a state of shock, she repeated the question, "The crown prince wants to see me." Our heroine could have assumed that he found out who she was, but that he would show up so quickly. She guessed that if he caught her now, he would destroy her, but she didn't want that. When her brother asked if she knew him personally, she had to deny everything. I thought that if I planned to survive, I should be as shameless as possible. That's why she said she didn't know why he came. It was not at all cultural. Even if he is a prince, coming uninvited is an insult to the house. The cousin considered her arguments about the family's honor to be quite reasonable and realistic. Therefore, he said that he would send the crown prince back and set a new time for meetings. Daisy was very pleased with her idea for honor. It turned out quite clever. The crown prince appreciated her resourcefulness and said that he would try the same next time. Hearing his voice behind her, she almost jumped in horror. The silent scream remained stuck in her throat, and the crown prince kindly informed her that he missed her. She squeezed out in response how he got here and was already on the third floor. In response, he asked if she had already forgotten about his abilities. He could remind her. She didn't want to, and he said he felt hurt when she refused to meet him. Coming close to her, he almost hung over her and said that it upset him. Didn't she miss him at all, but he thought about her all the time? She tried to stop panicking, thinking that he was just a character from a game. I started to reassure myself that in the worst case, if she dies, the game will end. This thought stopped her train of thought, because this way she would not get her winnings. 2 billion quickly brought her to her senses. She asked how he knew where she was. He said that she was just making fun of her. There was nothing he didn't know. Helen told him about meeting her today at 2 o'clock, so he refused him. But the Duke had not been interested in women before, so he remembered that he had already met one right in front of him. And then the whole puzzle came together. And if the Duke was really going to meet her, then she forgot about it. The Crown Prince said that after finding out her name, he did some digging around her. She is the daughter of a simple baron, and they spent their time traveling and doing charity work. One of the organizations they sponsored was the Winter Kingdom Restoration Association. And as she should have realized by now, his plan was to stop the Demon King before he awakened. But the only ones who are against this plan are precisely that Restoration Association. Then suddenly, a suspicious lady appears, and in her opinion, it is an accident. She replied that her parents had left everything to charity, and that nothing could be found on her. I asked, but wouldn't defeating the Demon King be a plus for the Winter Kingdom? She played the fool just to look uninvolved, asked the Crown Prince. And he asked, because she knows that the princess is in hibernation with the Demon King. When she agreed with this statement, he continued telling her that this association has come to replace the royal family while it sleeps. After a short pause, he asked if she now understood why he suspected her. When the princess wakes up, the association will return everything she previously owned. So if he succeeds, this association of revival will be left with nothing. And he wondered if she understood why these people wanted him to leave. That's exactly why she looks like a spy who was sent to kill him. Daisy, angry, replied that she was tired of telling him that she was not with them. The Crown Prince said it was up to him to decide, and to find out, he would keep her close. She thought that she could hardly breathe when he was around, and he wanted her to be with him always. Extending his hand, he said that this meant that she would voluntarily go with him to the Spring Palace. If he takes her without permission, it will become a reason for war between the kingdoms. He will have to ask the king for permission, which is all he can do. He added that he had many options, so it would be best for her to go with him. She thought that the crowned prince might be of benefit to her, but he is not stupid. He could have quietly kidnapped her, but he decided to settle things with the king diplomatically. She realized that he wouldn't be able to deceive her, and she had to take everything she could from this. She said out loud that she agreed to go with him, but he had to interest her. She figured in her mind that he needed her, otherwise he wouldn't have come to her in person. And she knew she would find something to interest her, so she decided to make the task a little more difficult. That's why she said that there was one condition: he had to do everything in 5 minutes. Looking at him, Daisy thought to herself that everything was as simple as he thought. No matter how inspired he is, it won't work. She's not one to be easily convinced. She was even interested in what exactly he would offer her during these 5 minutes. Having mentally connected with the AI, she began to wish for all sorts of blessings in life. The internal clock counted down the time, and after a couple of minutes, the Crown Prince broke the silence. He said in a satisfied tone that this teleportation scroll cost 10 gold per sheet, and he continued that if she did go with him, she would receive 10 of the same, that this is her monthly salary in real life, and he offers her 10 sheets. Daisy agreed to go with him, but on the condition that he add 5 more sheets. She thought she had agreed too quickly, but with that amount, she was a winner either way. I remembered the witch who, knowing the price, so calmly shared the scrolls. She thought that she would also need to share with her friends. The Crown Prince, having discussed something with his knight, invited her to go with him, so Daisy found herself in the Spring Palace for the second time, only this time for an audience. The audience hall was impressive, as was everything in this game world. Daisy, Maya, Estella, and the Crown Prince of the Autumn Kingdom Alex Lloyd Phillips, have requested an audience. Our Lady was attending such a formal event for the first time and was very nervous. When they were allowed to raise their heads, she saw the king of the Spring Kingdom. Daisy saw a little girl, apparently a princess, and she heard that she was also a player. The princess had airy silver hair and sparkling green eyes. The girl's appearance was completely taken from the heroine of the first novel, Daisy. Now she understood why the girl was so touched when she saw the princess. Unable to contain herself, she sent her a message, greeted her, and introduced herself. Then she said that she knew well the novel from which her appearance was taken. And when she added that she was a big fan of this series, the princess gave her a smile. Then she sent a message that the princess was even more beautiful than she imagined. I wanted to talk some more, but the AI wrote that the message could not be sent, that you can only send 10 messages through the AI manager in one location. Daisy realized that she was not yet used to this, and her uneasiness was noticed by the crown prince. He whispered to her not to be nervous, as their king was known to be a tyrant. Even in the Autumn Kingdom, her anxiety would arouse unnecessary suspicion. In confirmation of these words, His Majesty shouted out the reason for their request. He really is a tyrant, our heroine thought. And is the princess safe? But Daisy could not imagine the influence the princess had on her father. The princess burst into tears and said that Dad was speaking so loudly that Laura was afraid. She didn't understand why he was yelling at their lady and added that Dad was scary. The king, wiping away his daughter's tears, apologized to her and said that it would not happen again. The AI warned Daisy against such formidable figures as the king of the Spring Kingdom. He reported that as the game progresses, there may be poisoning and constructed death, and other reasons that may lead to an unfinished game. This will lead to a break in the ending. That is, everything is as before, but without 2 billion. Daisy was afraid that something like this might happen, but dying halfway would leave her with nothing. Meanwhile, the crown prince spoke and said that a lot of time had passed. He said that he came to discuss the issue of preventing the Demon King. The king asked a clarifying question, this time about his plan with Duke Kaeld, and they want to find a place to hibernate in the fight against relentless blizzards and monsters. He asked if they were ready to die in this mission, and the crown prince answered in the affirmative. By explaining that the sacrifices are justified, the Demon King can wreak havoc across the entire continent. Daisy thought that he would have to risk his life. She could not do something like that. The crown prince said that to reduce the danger they planned to take the lady with them. Our heroine couldn't believe her ears when he introduced her as this lady. He added that he believed in the strength of this lady, and that her help was very important to him and the Duke. That is why she asks His Majesty to give her permission to join them. The king thought, actually, like Daisy, she did not understand what she had to do with it. The monarch asked exactly this question, and how could such a young lady help them? Our heroine was just thinking about this. Why take a homebody with you to the operation? Perhaps they want to take her with them and make her death look like an accident. Moreover, the crown prince already considers her a suspect and will not stand on ceremony with her. Lord Alex's further speech sounded very convincing, indicating that he had learned a lot about her. He said that she had been an excellent scribe for a long time. Daisy thought she was called a homebody because she spent her days sitting at home copying books. The king, turning to the crown prince, said that he still did not understand how this was connected with the operation. And Alex replied that, thinking about it, there is nothing like that in ordinary books, however. After a short pause, he continued that among all her works, there were others. Ancient works of the Winter Kingdom and the works of the Demon King were found, and literature related to it is prohibited, and even the nobility is not exempt from punishment. He then continued that sometimes, if it is serious, it is punishable by death. Our heroine couldn't believe that the crown prince was telling all this so calmly. The princess became worried and wondered if the crown prince was in love with the new girl. So I turned to Daisy with a question, saying that apparently she didn't have such an item. This item is sold in the store and allows unlimited communication via AI. However, she can only send 10 messages. She is always ready to help her. And if she notices that the prince is up to something bad, then give her a sign. Daisy realized with horror that she was now not only poor, but also a criminal. Alex said that she had committed serious crimes, but she knew a lot about demons. Then, he asked if she would work off her sins and help the kingdom. If the lady joins the team, she will help find the Demon King's lair, and they will be able to quickly neutralize him while he sleeps. And isn't that the best outcome? This way, Lady Daisy will get her name back, and they will protect all 4 kingdoms. The king said that he did not understand why the crown prince was so protective of her. Our heroine couldn't even imagine in her worst nightmare what happened next. The crown prince, taking her hand, said that all this was because he loved Lady Daisy. It took her a couple of moments, which seemed like an eternity, to comprehend it. When the meaning of what was said reached her, she repeated the word love in unison with the princess. She didn't throw a tantrum in front of the king, but once she got home, she spoke out. Pounced on Alex, she asked him if he was crazy enough to say such things at an audience. How could he say that he loved her? She almost died of shame in front of her highness. And I remembered the expression on the king's face when he said that it was clear, and that was enough for today. After abruptly changing the subject, she asked how long he had had feelings for her. The crown prince smiled and replied that he had said these words to the king, not to her. And he started talking about something completely different, saying that he wanted to explain something to her about her king, that during the war with the Demon King, thousands of soldiers of the Spring Kingdom will die. But this does not matter to the king. However, every soldier is important to him. He is a valuable resource. Her knowledge can reduce losses. That's what really matters to him. It is impossible to convince the king by desire alone and reduce the number of victims. That's why he used the love approach, but it still didn't work. He said that in any case, it was better to undergo the operation than to suffer and rot in prison. Thinking that she hadn't done anything yet, she saw the Duke approaching them. When she asked why the Duke was in this garden, he answered why she was asking. He came to see her off to the meeting, and then she remembered what they had agreed on. She felt embarrassed for her forgetfulness. They were supposed to have lunch at 2 o'clock. However, she was alarmed by the Duke's tone when he asked why the Crown Prince was here. Then, our heroine felt how the atmosphere in the park became tense. It was clear to the naked eye that the situation was getting more and more tense. Alex spoke to the Duke, who replied that he had spoken to Daisy, not to him. The AI reported that this is the main episode. The girl is torn between 2 men. She looked away from the lords and asked the AI manager what the main episode was, a special episode among thousands of others that captured the majority of viewers' interest. There are common episodes, for example, when a girl hates her appearance, or an episode of conflict with a rich stepmother who asks to separate from her son. However, all discovered major episodes are rewarded with 1 coin. At this point, Our Lady thought that she would have to collect them very carefully. But, on the other hand, this is her chance to show off her experience in reading romance. She began to analyze what moments most struck her while reading. An idea came to her mind, and she decided to test it without wasting any time. Turning to the Crown Prince, Daisy said that it was she who had not kept her word. Therefore, His Highness did not need to reproach the Duke, and he asked what she was talking about. Daisy replied that everything was as she said, and she did not want the Duke to be blamed for her mistake. At that very moment, the AI reported that the main episode reward of 1 coin had been awarded. Daisy was pleased that she had correctly assessed how to set up the main episodes. She couldn't help but be pleased with the fact that she understood the rules of the game better and better every day. When the Crown Prince asked her if she was in any pain, she replied that he was not obliged, and she asked me not to try to get to know her better, because if it continues, it will only get worse. The Crown Prince's reaction was appreciated, and our heroine received the award for the main episode. Alex asked the Duke, confused, if he thought Daisy was acting strange. Helen understood her behavior in his own way and replied that she just wanted his attention. The Crown Prince was completely confused and asked the lady why she was behaving this way. Our Lady was satisfied and asked the AI how many coins she had earned today. In response, she received a message from the manager that there were 10 coins in the player's account. Then she happily thought that she had taken advantage of the situation today. She put on a real show. But what should she do with these coins now? The AI replied that it could buy items from the store, and she would like to visit it. When she agreed, the store loaded, and Daisy asked if it was all for coins. The AI told her that her first purchase would be free on her first visit to the store. It was a generous offer, and she decided it was worth choosing something expensive. Her attention was drawn to a month of unlimited messaging through the manager's AI. She was attracted by the fact that she would be able to communicate with other ladies without restrictions. When the message came that the item was worth only 1 coin, she changed her mind. She needed something else, something more expensive, so she started looking further. Then I came across the item that was the prize for third place. It was worth 4,000. She thought, because if you think about it, the ending of the game depends on the man's choice. In that case, it made sense to take something directly related to this. Having made her decision, she informed the AI that she would take the male character's choice. The status screen showed that the item the player selected had been purchased. Then, the AI reported that it had been moved to the inventory and whether she wanted to exit the store. Having answered negatively, our heroine thought that she still had something to evaluate. She was interested in the price for viewing 3 candidates for the title of Hidden Man. She figured that third place was worth 4,000. So how much was first place worth? Daisy quickly typed what she wanted to find into the search bar, but the result surprised her. A search of 3 candidates for the title of Hidden S-Rank Man yielded nothing. Then the girl wondered if it was for sale because it was so rare. She tried a few more times, but the result remained the same, that is, nothing. But the fact that she was the only one among everyone who used it sounded like some kind of bug. Then she got bored and thought that in order to catch the tiger, she needed to go into his den. And to collect more key episodes, it's worth getting out more often. Our heroine also thought that she didn't want to become the best with the nickname of a housewife. On this beautiful day, I set myself the task of earning 50 coins. Along the way, she began to think up a plan on how she could earn these key episodes. She understood that she couldn't start an exciting scene with the first passerby. There was no need to return to the prince and the duke, especially since she had clearly overacted. She was even a little ashamed, but at the same time, both were candidates for the title of Hidden Man. Thinking about this, she remembered the third candidate and was interested in how he was. She only knew that he was far away in the cold snows and remembered his touch. It was so warm, even now, remembering it. Goosebumps ran through her body. Our Lady was so intent on meeting him again that she didn't look where she was going. And even when she bumped into a passerby, she didn't stop thinking about that distant man. The AI even suggested that it was a fateful reunion or a major episode. Looking up, I thought that this is exactly how everything happens in fantasy romance. But this passerby turned out to be the Duke, who asked if she was still following him. It was not him at all that she wanted to see, and she asked for her snowy, handsome man to be returned to her. However, pulling herself together and remembering her manners, she greeted the Duke. She quickly said that she was very busy today and asked permission to leave. Daisy really thought she would be able to leave peacefully, but it didn't work out that way. The Duke said in a very serious tone that they urgently needed to discuss something. As much as she wanted to get rid of him, she agreed to give him a little time. While they were ordering tea in a small cafe, she kept wondering what he wanted. So, as soon as the waiter served them, she asked what he wanted to discuss. Helen replied that after her arrival, he received a short report from His Highness. Lowering his voice slightly, he continued that apparently she had committed some kind of crime. Not quite understanding what he meant, she said if it were considered a crime. Interrupting her, the Duke said that he was not privy to the details of the crime itself. However, I would like to offer her my help, and she was even more surprised. The Duke said that among all the awards received for suppressing the enemy's offensive, and it was a decree of pardon, but it can only be used once. But observing her plight, he is ready to offer her this reward. Then, Daisy said that it would be better for him to keep the reward for himself, in case he needed it again. To which Helen said that he was responsible for her knowing about the Demon King's plan, and also for the subsequent attention from the crowned prince. Understanding her surprise in his own way, he explained that he was responsible for her falling in love with him. He did not immediately appreciate the depth of her feelings, but he had to go through the entire Autumn Kingdom after him. The lady thought that the hashtag's misunderstanding of the genre was apparently to blame for everything. She was distracted from these thoughts by the princess's message that they had a serious problem. Her Highness said that her father had arrested her brother and thrown him into prison, that the king accuses his cousin of possessing forbidden literature and throws him into the tower. but he promised to release Duke Eiderg if she joined the research group. However, the cousin refused and claimed that he did not want her to do this. She found this strange, since the king himself had refused the crown prince an audience. He then explained that there was no point in sending someone as helpless as she was. And have they really gone so far as to blackmail her with her cousin Byrne? She asked the AI if such behavior was possible for this character. The AI replied that they should head to the castle and face the problem head-on. But the king was a tyrant, and she didn't think that a dialogue would take place even if it were one-on-one. When she asked whether a pardon could be used, the AI's answer was negative, and heading to the castle is a strong recommendation, and preferably immediately. Daisy didn't want to meet the king at all, and she thought about pardoning him again. She wondered why the game was so insistent on her coming to the castle. She had a bad feeling, but she still requested an urgent audience. Imagine her surprise when the butler announced that the king was awaiting her arrival. She had the feeling that the game definitely wanted to force her into one plot. The king said that she had come after all. Having heard the news of her brother's imprisonment, she replied that he knew that it was her fault for keeping forbidden books. He said that he was very touched by their family connection, and she wanted to take advantage of it. But, on the other hand, he was a tyrant, and ordinary requests for mercy might not have worked. She thought that she would have to really suck up to him in order to convince him. She said pompously that His Majesty was known for his mercy, and although her brother may be only slightly to blame for these crimes, after listening to her attentively, he asked in a threatening tone whether she wanted to deceive him. Repeating the word wise, he asked, "Does he look like an idiot who does not understand anything?" The lady began to justify herself, but he ordered her to remain silent and not dare to deceive. In the end, for this crime, he put her in prison instead of the Duke. Even when the iron bars slammed in front of her nose, she still didn't believe it. Everything didn't go according to plan. Even in this game, the shady boss ruined everything for her. The princess asked via message if everything was okay with the new lady, to which Daisy replied that where she is, it is dark and cold, and she is also afraid of cockroaches. The answer came that she would have to be patient, and that the princess was trying to convince him. Then Daisy thought, as expected, the character in The King had completely changed. Meanwhile, the princess wrote that it was necessary to contact the saint of the Autumn Kingdom. Her words are considered law, and even the king cannot say anything to her. Daisy thought that the saint was one of the 3 players who knew about the awakening. She knew that the game had a certain scenario, a main line of all events, and despite how much freedom the game gives, the player moves within the framework of this plot. In other words, to get her on the team, they changed the king's character. And according to the new scenario, she suddenly had a connection with the saint on the advice of the princess. Having come to this conclusion, she decided to send a message to the saint right now. Daisy dreamed of a quiet romance, but in the end, she will have to fight the demon king. But I had no choice. I found Easy Prophet's name among the players and contacted her. The answer came with a question. She is a newcomer who has arrived in the Spring Kingdom. Having said that she was always free to communicate with the lady, she asked what brought her to her. When Daisy quickly told everything, the saint replied that they had completely lost their minds. Afterwards, she assured our heroine that she was on her side and would definitely help. Moreover, Daisy was the last one to know about the awakening of the Demon King. And yet our heroine fell into despair, not understanding why this was happening to her. The saint wrote that it would be even more interesting this way, and asked if she would join the team. Daisy didn't understand why she was chosen. She wasn't the best archer, nor was she a saint. After all, she was a simple homebody, and as it seemed to her, she would only get in everyone's way. To which Isa replied that she thought Daisy was perfect for the team. Then she added that she would give a false prophecy right now, and they would go together. Having said goodbye and said that she would see you on the team, the new saint hung up, and Our Lady thought that she could only get out thanks to the prophecy. She didn't have to guess for long. The false prophecy worked, and it said, if the spring daisy does not plant a flower on the peak of a snowy mountain, everything around will wither. Her brother and the king agreed to send her on the expedition, so she was released. It turned out that if she didn't get into the liberation team, if she died, everyone would die. Daisy was already getting into the carriage when she heard her cousin's parting words. He said he would never have believed that he would have to say goodbye to her like this. And this is the best outcome of all. And even if this prophecy is still difficult for him, she reassured him by saying that she would be among the masters, so there was no need to worry. His face still showed concern as he asked her to be careful. Having promised her brother to be careful, she asked him to take care of himself too. When the carriage entered the teleportation gate, she shouted that she would write to him often. The fact that the king's daughter and saint were also on a mission calmed our heroine. There was another circumstance that warmed her soul. She was going to the Winter Kingdom. After all, it was there, on the snowy mountain, where everything was covered in snow, that she met him. She wondered if she would ever be able to see him again if she went back again. But this was a future she did not know. She could only hope. Her short journey ended, and she found herself in a Winter Kingdom. She had been here once before, but she hadn't had time to look around. Breathing in the fresh, frosty air, she thought, "This is what this kingdom is like." Just like the first time, everything around was white, and the soft snow crunched underfoot. Turning towards the familiar voice, she saw the Duke who was greeting her. After looking at her closely, he noted that it was cold outside, and she should wrap up warm. Taking off his thick scarf, the Duke carefully wrapped the new arrival in it. Turning around, Daisy saw something amazing. She wanted to take a closer look. When she ran there at full speed, he asked in surprise where she was going. Having reached the edge of the cliff, she pointed ahead and said that there was something amazing there. She said all 3 seasons, and the Duke guessed that the lady was seeing it for the first time. He said out loud that from the center of the Winter Kingdom, one can see the boundaries of all seasons. Springs with flowering plants, green summer forests, and autumn covered with golden leaves. The Winter Kingdom, which united the other 4, was the most prosperous place. But all this was a long time ago, before the awakening of the Demon King 50 years ago. Daisy wanted to watch some more, but he replied that he would lose and suggested going with firewood. But she was delighted when the offer to go for firewood turned out to be just a joke. The Duke led her into a spacious house, and she noted that it was well prepared. Helen agreed that it was quite a cozy place to stay temporarily. Having advised her to make herself at home, he hesitated a little at the threshold. Having plucked up his courage, he added that if she wanted to be with him, she shouldn't be shy about saying so. She asked him to leave her alone, and he replied that she was indeed very shy. As she flopped onto the bed, she thought that here he was even more mistaken. She wanted to rest, but the phrase "I want to drink some warm water" did not allow her to forget. The Crown Prince, terribly pleased with himself, announced that he could show him a hot spring. Daisy looked at him and asked with displeasure how he got in here. The Crown Prince responded by saying that it turned out he was very good at sneaking up on people. In response to her statement that it was an illegal entry, he promised to be more careful. After asking for forgiveness, this is what makes her work immediately upon arrival. She had translated demonic books before, so it wouldn't be difficult. Looking at the letter, Daisy wondered how she could translate it. The AI reported that the homebody's ability to translate from the demonic language was activated. The auto-translation was activated, and she read when 3 stars form a line. The thought occurred to her that apparently translation from the demonic language was her thing. I read on to find out which star is the beginning and which is the end before that day arrives. I read that it is worth observing the stars that form a triangle. Raising her gaze to the Crown Prince, she said, "This is what it says." Alex, without hiding his satisfaction, said that it was worth bringing her, and she asked him for a tip, since he made her work during her vacation. She even explained that it was another teleportation scroll, and the Crown Prince chuckled. Having said that she was indeed strange, he added that she seemed to be afraid of him. But at the same time, he can say with confidence that she is not afraid of him. When the lady asked if he wanted her to be afraid of him, he replied that he didn't even know. Approaching her, he said that he liked how she was not afraid of his gaze. But he wants to see her tears. At this moment, his face was dangerously close. Our heroine slowly pronounced his title to bring him to his senses. When that didn't work, she glared at him and asked if he was a pervert. He looked straight into her eyes, trying to understand how seriously she asked. Not finding the answer he needed in her gaze, he approached her again and said, "Who knows?" Provoking her with his whole appearance, he said that he felt they would be a good couple. Without releasing his grip for a second, he asked if maybe they should try. At that moment, Daisy wondered what exactly he had come up with this time. But, as luck would have it, not a single suitable or reasonable thought came to mind. The Crown Prince's unpredictable behavior had already tired our heroine out. Snorting, the Crown Prince said that she had once again reacted exactly as he expected. She wanted to tell him everything honestly, and she even opened her mouth, but changed her mind. Looking at her sour face, he asked if he could have her for a minute. In a conciliatory tone, the Crown Prince explained that he wanted to know something. They were walking down long, spacious corridors when she said this was the place. Alex continued her thought, saying that it was huge and it was a communal building, used by the Scout Society, ranging from meeting rooms, and ending with a huge library. In other words, this building has everything. She continued to look around, her mouth wide open in surprise. He chuckled and noted that sometimes you have to move around using a teleporter. When she asked what kind of painting it was, he replied that this was exactly what he wanted to show. She had never seen anything like this before, and how was she supposed to analyze and understand what it was? The AI reported that the demonic knowledge scanning ability has been activated. From the expression on her face, the Crown Prince guessed that Daisy knew something. Our heroine said that this painting was created by the king himself, in memory of his last wife. Alex then asked if he had really drawn her himself. After thinking for a bit, he added that he had never noticed anything sentimental in him. Daisy looked at the painting and read that many years had passed since she had passed away. Then she explained to her companion that this painting was a love letter, and she began to read further, that many years had passed since the moment when people took her away. But he is still imprisoned by time, and every time he wakes up, he goes in the hope of meeting her. But he always finds only disappointment. The fact that she left has not changed, that he no longer remembers her face, and therefore will no longer be able to draw her. Having finished reading, our heroine continued to look at the image without taking her eyes off it. She was so moved by this story that she could not contain her emotions. Seeing tears in his companion's eyes, the Crown Prince asked if she was crying. Finally coming apart, Daisy replied that it was a very touching story. The Crown Prince was not a sensitive person, but her tears touched him. Thinking that he should have taken a handkerchief, he decided to offer her at least his sleeve. Knowing full well that she would stain his suit, she warned him about it. He replied that he would soon go to the conference hall, so he should hurry up before he changes his mind. She found it a little funny, but still didn't refuse. Afterwards, with great pleasure, she blew her nose into his expensive suit. The Crown Prince was upset, but Daisy, on the contrary, felt avenged. Once they had entered the conference room, he announced that she would pay for his dry cleaning. Our Lady answered honestly that she wouldn't even think about it, but their quarrel was interrupted. A saint appeared at the door and asked, "Your Highness, are you here yet?" When she asked about the lady, the Crown Prince said that he would introduce her now. Daisy stared wide-eyed at the newcomer, at her divine glow and aura. All this divinity speaks of one thing, apparently. This is the very saint of our generation. She immediately sent a message introducing herself and thanking him for saving her. And the saint said out loud that it was nice to meet such an interesting lady. Issa also sent a message that Diana would definitely like this new girl. Hearing this name, Daisy thought that there was only one lady she had not seen. It must be her. Another lady entered the room, apologizing for being late, explaining that she was on patrol. The Crown Prince asked Diana in a friendly manner if she had business even in the Winter Kingdom. Daisy couldn't believe her luck. She was in the same room with legendary figures. There was no mistake. This was Diana, the second most powerful swordsman on the continent and the king's daughter. Our heroine thought, this lady is just walking, and she already exudes such power. Daisy and the saint exchanged messages that Diana was worthy of admiration. But it was not only the lady who attracted attention, but also her two companions. All three of these together created a real visual impact on those around them. Daisy was so absorbed in looking at the new arrivals that she completely forgot to say hello. She introduced herself as a representative of the Spring Country, Daisy from the House of Estella, and that it was an honor for her to appear before the princess. Then Diana interrupted her speech. She asked them to relax, since they could address each other without formalities. Daisy was left wondering why the two weren't greeting the Crown Prince. I thought it was quite the opposite. They were staring at him so angrily, forgetting about their manners. The saint made it clear in her message that the third and fourth swords were rude. She also explained to our heroine that they only listened to their sister Diana. In general, the summer and autumn countries have never had very good relations. She explained that the third and fourth are not names at all, but titles of fencers. The second most powerful in the summer country is Diana, and she is accompanied by the third and fourth swords. Issa also said that Diana is not only a good swordsman, but also a great ruler. Daisy even envied the inhabitants of the summer country, because the spring ruler is a tyrant. She was also worried about joining the suppression squad. But now that she is here, it reassures her that there are such reliable girls nearby. After Helen joined them later, a full-fledged meeting began. Our heroine was tasked with keeping records and acting as a secretary. But this work turned out to be not so easy. After some time, she had no strength. The AI informed Daisy that the demon territory would be added as a new zone, to be played in the game's sequel, but at the moment this location has not yet been developed. When using movement scrolls, the chance of a bug is 94%. Daisy realized that scrolls had to be used with caution in the demonic zone, because there is a possibility of teleportation in an unknown direction. By the time the meeting ended, our heroine was quite hungry. The sight of the delicious dishes and the smell they emitted could not leave her indifferent. Her eyes were running wild, and she couldn't decide where to start, and decided to start with the soup. When you hear a shout, stop. That's what she did to understand who they were talking to. The man shouted in her face that the king must walk along this flower-strewn road, but she has no place on this pure path, whose feet are stained with the dirt of contempt. Daisy was deeply offended by what he was doing, and who this idiot was. From his appearance, she could guess that he was a subject of the Summer Kingdom. The subject asked whose side she was on, and to which kingdom she belonged. To his questions, she replied that she was from the baronial house of Estella of the Spring Kingdom. Having learned that she was the baron's daughter, he asked her to sit in the farthest corner of the hall. The lady, starting to boil, asked, "There are plenty of free seats here, why there?" The answer was that she did not have her own title, and such a person could not be seated next to His Majesty. Their bickering did not go unnoticed, and the saint was the first to react. In response to her AI query, Daisy said that this psycho suddenly started yelling at her. Issy said that when someone new appears next to Diana, this is what they do. To try to break his spirit, the princess intervened in their conversation. She apologized to the new girl and promised to sort out the situation. Calling the eunuch to her, she said that he always tries so hard. He fawned over his mistress as best he could and asked her to come inside, while saying that serving Her Highness was his direct duty and honor. Ignoring his speech, Diana asked if he had been polite to her lady. Our heroine wondered why she had found herself in such a sticky situation again. And was it really possible to settle this incident only by choosing her as a concubine? The subject of the Summer Kingdom realized his mistake, which could cost him his life. Daisy was not very happy with the outcome of this seemingly small conflict, but the male characters were the most surprised, because their girlfriend was being taken away from them. She also couldn't understand why the princess was looking at her with such eyes. The eunuch still wanted to clarify the situation and asked Diana if she was taking a concubine again. At that moment, the princess texted Daisy and asked. She must have been very confused, and Our Lady asked if she would really become a concubine. The answer was that of course not. It was just her way of protecting the new girl. Diana explained that the eunuch was loyal to the imperial court and strictly followed etiquette. Therefore, if Daisy is considered hers, he will not dare to treat her rudely. The eunuch fell on his face and, apologizing for having dared to show disrespect, asked for mercy. Realizing that it was serious, Daisy said that everything was fine and allowed me to raise my head. Suddenly, the crown prince spoke and asked the princess if she had asked the lady's opinion, and he added that she would like to ask who Daisy really holds in her heart. In response, Diana asked why he was even interfering in this situation. Daisy felt like everything suddenly started to develop like a love quadrangle. Afterwards, she felt that everyone around her was starting to observe this situation. But she understood them. When She Solo is happening before your eyes, it's impossible not to get hooked. Diana asked why everyone was reacting so violently to the fact that Lady Daisy became hers. This formulation made the Crown Prince laugh a lot, and he asked why on earth she did it. And the Duke added that the lady was actually from the Spring Kingdom, and not from the summer or autumn ones. Alex replied that it was not a fact yet, because she could change her mind and become one of the autumn ones. To our heroine's surprise, the saint replied, "What's the big deal? Isn't it wonderful?" When the three leaders are fighting over her, who would dare to treat her without respect now? Then she added that perhaps the real first place in the intelligence group ranking is a lady. The AI reported that she got a super major episode with world leaders, which fell under the spell of the main character, and the player receives a reward of 10 gold. The next day, the reconnaissance group began to survey the southern snowfields. Daisy thought she would only have to decipher the demon language, but she was taken on as a reconnaissance officer. If it weren't for this crown prince, this heartless boss, who dragged her here, he seemed to have read her thoughts, and, turning slightly towards her, smiled slyly. Looking at this face, she thought with displeasure that he was also laughing at such a moment. For some reason, all these situations of the past days made her more and more angry. The princess said that she thought Alex and Helen were truly in love with the lady. Daisy replied that not at all. The crown prince was simply trying his best to boss her around. And Helen simply behaves this way because he has such a key parameter. Diana, looking at the new girl, decided that she should tell her something. She said that she and Alex spent 4 years side by side at the academy, and they have known each other for a long time with Helen, and these two are definitely not together for no reason. She was about to continue her story, but at that moment, the system reported a bug. Daisy and other players read the following messages about monsters escaping nearby. This message is sent to players within 50 meters of the monster. The AI continued that all who received the message must leave the area immediately. Our heroine asked the princess and the saint if they had received these messages. Diana answered in the affirmative, adding that it was necessary to inform the Duke and Crown Prince immediately. But it was not possible to warn Alex and Helen, because the monsters had already attacked. It was so unexpected that unimaginable confusion began in the reconnaissance group. And while the more experienced fighters quickly regrouped, our heroine was at a loss. She was not prepared to find herself in the very epicenter of life-threatening danger. The system warned about the bug yesterday, and it promised itself to be careful. Daisy had no idea what she could do when they were completely surrounded. She thought the best thing she could do was trust the rest of the reconnaissance squad. Alex was the first to engage the monster in battle in order to buy time to escape. He gave a loud command, ordering everyone to immediately get their teleportation scrolls. Daisy heard that it was urgent to return to the expedition camp. However, the system reported an error using items due to the appearance of bugs. Mentally breaking free, she informed the Crown Prince that the teleportation scroll wasn't working. Alex didn't understand why this was happening, and she didn't have time to explain the reason. Diana said that in that case, all they could do was kill everyone here. She quickly drew her trusty katana and prepared for a bloody massacre. Her movements were precise, and it wasn't for nothing that she was the continent's second-ranked swordswoman. Daisy even forgot about the danger for a few moments, admiring this scene. But monsters were still monsters, and it was impossible to relax for a second. Our heroine was convinced of this after just a few short moments. She couldn't understand how the monster had gotten up if its body had been cut in two. But this short period of time, while she was distracted, was enough for the monster. Taking advantage of the general confusion and her confusion, the monster soared upward. When she realized that the earth was rapidly moving away from her, she called for help. The reconnaissance party gradually diminished as she moved higher and higher. In desperation, I called the AI, which reported that searching for information about demons was unavailable. Then he finally adjusted and reported that the monster was an iridium type, the highest class. To deal damage, you need to attack the heart of the original with a different eye color. The AI also reported that only then could harm be done to the remaining iridians. At that moment, she understood why the severed body parts of the monsters were restored. She shouted to the boys that they needed to attack the original with the different eye color. She screamed at the top of her lungs that this was the only way they could destroy all these monsters. Having discovered the one the lady was talking about, the princess ordered Elena to guard Daisy, and she ordered Alex to create a path so that they could rise as high as possible. When the height was satisfactory, The princess began to climb up. Diana's heart began to beat faster, but only she could cope with this task. She believed in herself and in the power of her faithful sword. She knew that she could do it. The princess mentally said, "I gather all my strength into the sword and deliver an accurate blow." Her energy, determination, and hope created a powerful current directed at the monster. The sword emerged with a sparkling light, cutting through the massive monster before her. Daisy had no doubt in the princess's abilities. She was confident of victory. However, she didn't take into account one small detail. One of the monsters was holding her. As soon as their enemy was defeated, our heroine began to rapidly approach the ground. At that moment, she thought that she was not yet at all ready for her death. She didn't have time to think that she could still lose all her winnings. And although both the Duke and the Prince were at a decent distance, they ran towards her. Luckily for her, Helen arrived in time, and she fell into his strong arms. She was so scared that she didn't even hear him ask if she was okay. The state of shock gradually began to subside, and the heartbeat returned to normal. Bursting into tears, she finally forced out that she thought she would die of fear. Our heroine thanked the Duke for saving her and saw the Crown Prince's satisfied face. Alex, in his half-joking manner, stated that they looked like a laughingstock. Daisy said that it was so good that they got back to camp safely. The saint responded by noting that from the very first day, everything had not gone according to plan. But thanks to their new lady, they dealt with the monsters quite quickly. Then Daisy said that in fact, the real heroine is the Emperor's daughter. Diana acted without panic, but she only managed to fall into the clutches of the monster. To which Issa said that it was thanks to her important hint that they won. Then she changed the subject, saying that Daisy had only recently started her journey in this game, that she had just entered her timeline, and she had already been living here for 6 years. Then she started talking about Diana, who began her timeline from the moment she was born. Daisy couldn't even immediately believe that she had possessed her character so long ago. That's why I asked, because the princess probably used time warp all the time, and she continued that she might even have jumped over several years at once. She said she used this feature to skip the boring preparation for her debut. Then the saint said that at the beginning of the game, the exchange of information was very weak. Therefore, the princess only learned about this function when she was about 16 years old. Daisy thought that she had lived these years like a princess, without the opportunity to change anything. It became clear to her why the heiress had such a different aristocratic style. The saint added that this is why, for Diana, these characters are real people. Our Lady thought that even she, after a month, had developed an attachment to the characters. And those who have been playing for more than 10 years probably feel such relationships as friendship and family. At that moment, Diana herself came and asked how they had rested. When the saint said that they were remembering her story, the princess asked again, "If that is the story that is meant, then it is better not to act as stupidly as she did." Afterwards, she asked me not to worry about the wound, because if I apply the ointment, everything will heal. The saint advised me to turn to Alex, because he has a rare life force. After all, the Crown Prince can not only accelerate the growth of plants, but also heal wounds. Diana said that he doesn't heal people because this power is transmitted only to family members. As a kind of symbol of the dynasty, Alex never uses it lightly. Daisy said it was cruel, but the saint said that exceptions could be made for friends, to which the princess replied that, in addition to her homeland, she always had family and friends. And Alex lived for the kingdom, as if his consciousness was completely subordinated to this goal. Daisy thought that, although the prince was not the friendliest, she felt sorry for him. Returning to her place, she put aside unnecessary thoughts and realized that she wanted to rest. But she knew that before she went to rest, she needed to write down everything that happened during the day. Our heroine began to write down what happened before the danger message arrived, and the monsters appeared. The flow of wind seemed a little strange and unusual to her. First it blew for 5 seconds, then after about 3 seconds, and so on in a circle. She didn't remember everything very clearly, but she decided to write it down anyway, just in case. Lost in her notes, she didn't hear the Crown Prince enter. In his smug manner, he said that she worked quite hard. He calmly continued that maybe it would be worth at least giving a bonus for the efforts. But his actions scared her to death. Her heart almost jumped out. He looked like she had just done the unthinkable and hit him. As if nothing had happened, He asked that the lady was probably tired and wanted to go to bed. She answered him that if she did something wrong, then he himself would grumble later. She thought to herself that her shoulders hurt and her whole body ached when he interrupted her thoughts. Alex insistently demanded not to be stubborn and to move faster before the owner changed his mind. Daisy asked again, "So he knows that he is the boss and she is the subordinate." In response, I heard a phrase to just listen to him, otherwise he would regret it later. That her muscle pain had gone away, and so she could sleep peacefully, and he would go too. She wondered in surprise what they were saying that the muscle pain had gone away, and she felt that her body became so light, as if she had undergone a full course of massage. She remembered today's conversation with the girls about Alex's capabilities. It was incredible, but it seemed like he was using the power of life when he touched her. With a sense of duty fulfilled, the Crown Prince walked back to his place with a light gait. On the way, he met Helen, who gave him a less than radiant smile. So he jokingly told him that at the end of this corridor, there was only a conference room, and he seriously asked what our Duke could possibly need at such a late hour. Helen had not counted on this meeting and had not yet come up with an answer. So Alex continued that he wanted to know what Helen was doing at this time. The Duke was in no mood for joking and replied that he would have to ask him. In fact, the Crown Prince did not want to upset the Duke, and he diffused the situation. He smiled and asked if he was still tense about what had happened. He also asked why the Duke was always so stern. He should at least smile occasionally. And patting his friend on the shoulder, the prince asked, "So what should I do now?" However, he already knew where the Duke was going, and said that what he brought was now useless. Continuing on his way, he threw over his shoulder that the Duke needed to arrive a little earlier. Helen also guessed where the Crown Prince was heading from, but said nothing. When he entered our heroine's chambers, he had no idea what surprise awaited him. The question of whether she would allow him to ask remained frozen on the lips of the astonished Duke. And how could one not be surprised when a lady practically dances after a hard day? Not only had they traveled a long way, but she was also in the clutches of a monster. Daisy couldn't be happier because the pain was gone, and she felt better than usual. The Duke expected her to lie in bed and rest, and for him to be able to comfort her. When he regained his speech, he finally asked what she was doing now. Daisy replied that she had been working too hard, so she was just doing a little warm-up. When she asked him what had brought him here at such an hour, Helen replied that he had come to give. He brought medicine from a very famous doctor, and it helps with bruises. Confused, she asked if he was sure he could give her something so valuable. Then he explained that today it was in the snowy field when he caught her as she fell. He saw the wounds she received in battle, so he got this one especially for her. That for a dark person like him, scars even suit him. But she is still a lady. Daisy was sure that he had come to talk nonsense as usual. But she was mistaken. I thought maybe he hit his head during the fight, or something else happened. As she was thinking silently, he asked her why she was looking at him like that. Realizing her mistake, she apologized, as it was impolite of her. At some point, seeing his hand, she realized that he, too, had been hurt. She couldn't leave it like that, especially since high-quality ointment was already on the table. The Duke was seriously confused when she began to apply the medicine to his hand. While saying that the Crown Prince of the Autumn Kingdom had already helped her, he used his ability on her, so now she's perfectly fine. She said she thought the Crown Prince had healed her only to overwhelm her with work, and he swears that he will complain to the Labor Inspectorate about him as an exploitative employer. She added that he had graceful hands, the kind they call a garland of prettiness. At that moment, the Duke looked as if he saw nothing and heard nothing. Afterwards, he said that it was already late, and it was time for her to finish and go inside. Left alone, I thought that I would never have guessed that he would be so shy, and also that I didn't have time to fully apply the medicine and not all the wounds will heal. The Duke had to lean against the wall in the corridor to come to his senses. This was the first time this had happened to him. He had never been so close to a woman's hand. While the reconnaissance detachment was being reformed, she found something useful to do. I decided to collect as much information about demons as possible so that there would be no gaps. After all, she was not strong in battle, but by understanding the enemy, perhaps she would get a chance. I discovered some interesting points. Beast demons and demons are different things. Beast demons, like that monster, did not possess intelligence equal to that of humans. On the other hand, the race known as demons is endowed with the same intelligence as humans. I thought about their ability to wield the power of ice and control it freely. This led her to the conclusion that she had already met one of the demons once. Then, on the snowy field, the one who saved her. And now he just couldn't get out of his head.